And she's back.
Hello. Hello, my darling.
Welcome.
Hello, everybody.
Right. Here we go to the giggles. Welcome to the Sam and Cat, or the Cat and Sam show. And we've had some good rest here going on with the holidays. And how were your holidays?
The holidays were good, except that we got hit by this new lurgy that was going around that everybody had. So it was very quiet. It was peaceful, but it was, it's one of those things where, when you relax into the holidays and actually have just not worry about all the extraneous stuff, they end up being really, really nice, which was lovely. But it wasn't what was intended. So, and it does feel like, it's freezing cold over here. But it's lovely to be back, and it feels like a proper new year now. So happy New Year. I haven't said Happy New Year to you.
It's the first time I've seen you in this year. It's lovely to see you.
And you.
And be with you here.
And now
we had a good holiday. It was relaxing.
And you've been busy as well. I saw that.
Yes. We had a water break in our house, so there was that, taking care of that. So,
well, I'm glad you're not flooded out, and I'm glad everybody's safe and well. I think we all needed the break as well. But
we jumped into a lot.
We did, and hopefully we're all fighting fit now, as best we can be, and we're ready. We're ready for a new year, ready to take on more of these battles and see where it gets us all.
Well, it's just our hope that we can make a dent in this huge issue.
Yes, I mean we've had some more cases over here, and there's Andrew Tate, the incel and trafficker that we can talk about, and I think probably warrants a show on its own. But also we've had a case over here of a police officer who is a serial rapist. He's actually been convicted now. Over 20 years, but with multiple people reporting him and it being ignored or, for no further action. And the complicity of everybody around him in the force, the mistakes, as they put it, that have been made. Well, these, So I'm very fired up by that. And it's
you're
horrific.
You're talking about the police, correct?
We're talking about the police, yes. So he is another police officer, active police officer, who used the fact that he was a police officer to gain trust. There's a minimum of 13 victims, women, multiple rapes and harassment and keeping them in the cupboard under the stairs. But he was, even when he was applying to training to be an officer, there was allegations of harassment and domestic abuse against him. And all of this was ignored. And the surprise isn't that this has happened, but that he's actually been held to account. But the case is so, it evidences so many issues, not least in the police. And I was actually sent an article by somebody in the States talking about the prevalence of officers as abusers and how many there are. And it's a phenomenal amount in the States, because obviously you have a bigger police force as well. But about how this job attracts a certain personality type, and it's about control. The job is actually about control. It's about controlling the environment. It's about keeping people safe. It's about whether it's crowd control or stopping a crime being committed. So the job itself, control is inherent in the job. But what seems to be happening is more and more people who misread the control that they are being afforded, what that gives them, and it should never give them immunity or impunity to abuse either the general public or in their own homes. But that is what seems that appears to be what is happening. It's so prevalent at the moment, and it's now becoming known. I'm sure it's been around for forever, but it's actually becoming known now. So, but yes, too many excuses.
Right. I mean, if we're asked to trust as a society that law enforcement is going to do their job and, control situations, then, how can we move forward if we have law enforcement that's not helping, hiding people that are perpetrators? I mean, you hear that all the time with people who are married to police officers and they can't get the correct kind of help in their area. I know quite a few that have been taken out of certain areas and dropped in places, safe houses and such, to get away from that arena for another, and there's just no excuse for it. I mean, we should be able to trust in society that the people that we hire as a society to do their job to the best of their ability. Not right?
Yeah, I mean, that is the pledge that they make. They take an oath. They make a pledge to do that, with integrity, with honesty, all of these things. And there's I think it's the Peelian oath or something. So Robert Peel, who started the police over here, and a quote from him is, "The police are the public and the public are the police." That it's to serve. It's one and the same. And there are good cops. The really sad thing is that there are good cops and there are people who are desperately trying to change this institution from the inside out. But they're as hamstrung as everybody else. It has to come from leadership. This is one of those arenas where it has to come from high-level leadership, because they just keep talking and doing absolutely nothing. But this is institutional. And if any other, I can't think of any other corporate, any other institution, and that it is corporate, that people are employed, we pay them. Our taxes pay for the police. But they are a corporation. And I cannot think of any other employer or institution or corporate body where the actions that they're taking, resulting in bodily and mental and life changing and taking harm, doesn't result in corporate prosecution or culpability. This isn't just the Met Police, it's everywhere in the UK, absolutely everywhere.
I'm going to argue that point in what about judges?
Precisely. Where are the judges'
What about
voices?
family? Right.
Where's the CP, Crown Prosecution Service voices? They are silent in all of this. There's not a dicky bird.
Well, it's like Right. It's like over here, I was watching one of the YouTubes, and this woman was outraged that her ex was out spending money, um, as she was reporting to this police or to the judge, um, and not paying his child support. And because she was outraged and acting the way she was in court, she got contempt charged and put in jail. Um, and 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 I'm not condoning people being, outrageous in society when we're trying to solve something. At the same time, it is outrageous if you can't get the help from the police, from judges, um, even lawyers, male lawyers have um, honed in on women that are in these situations, and especially here in the States, if you can't afford an attorney, they do this pro bono, where there's a group of attorneys that will help, and you run into attorneys assaulting, and then they feel like they have nowhere to go. I mean, it's just, there's no honor, and it's, there's no excuse. You can't have any excuse for that. It it just drives me nuts. You can have understanding in that we need more oversight, or we need, like you said, leadership. We need society to understand so that they can help um, elect the right people, or understand it enough to fight against it. But just ignoring it, and um, it's just like getting gaslighted. I mean, it is getting gaslighted. It's gaslighting the society to believe that I can go to a police officer, tell him I've been assaulted, and
It is, and it's and I have said this. It's not only is it futile, it's dangerous. We know that leaving and reporting is some of the like one of the most dangerous times for victims of abuse. But if you are reporting to somebody who themselves is an abuser, or who even if they don't abuse themselves feels akin to an abuser, feels that they have those rights, the job gives them that sense of superiority. We have to give them powers, but if they don't respect those powers, we're on a hide into nothing, and we have been for a long time. With racism, and I mean, the police have always been. There's always been an issue around the police, around groups that they feel superior to, and it just has to stop. It has to stop. I don't know what we do, but I mean, I suppose the thing is, we've got all of these opportunities to talk about it and come up with ideas, and I have to say, I think we've hit the ground running, don't you, Kat?
well, we have,
happy
and we're going
New
to keep
Year.
running. Right, exactly. It's just a shame, and at times I'm just at a loss for words in how I grew up and what I thought, and it's disheartening, um, and at the same time, it's promising when we can bring it out into the light and talk about it. Because I mean, there could be ramifications for doing such um, a long time ago, and I think that's definitely a plus. Um, I think about, like, and I've brought her up before. I think about the Gabby Petito, um, how she was talking and trying her best to be fair, and in her eyes, not knowing what kind of game she was in, and people not being trained well enough to understand her and her plight. And because any survivor that looks at that video can see it and understand it, as to what she was going through. And I think if a survivor can see it, if we can bring in more police, because the topic is going to get higher because of a football game, then obviously we know some things.
Absolutely. And I think this is one of the key areas as well, and I'm not alone in thinking this, that survivor voices and survivor experience, we are experienced. We do have experience. And for us to be utilised much more, which would be of benefit to everybody. It would be of benefit to the police, to the CPS, to the judges, but also to the other victims. We understand, Gabby she was surviving. She was doing whatever she had to say and do to survive. And well, that's what she was trying to do. And of course, her perpetrator was enabled. There is no excuse for officers to not know this. This is their job. They have training. They have laws. This is their job. General public, that's one thing. But when it comes to the police, frontline officers, it would not be acceptable for them to say, well, we're not taking a case any further because we don't know how burglars steal. We don't know how they got in, so we're just not going to take it any further because it's not really obvious how they did it. Can you imagine the uproar if that happened? And then, it's nonsensical. This is their job. And certainly in the UK, we have had a law since 2015. 2015. And they're still saying, well, we don't know about it.
Well, they don't know what they're, I could say they don't know what they're doing, but they, in some respects they don't, because society doesn't know what they're doing. There's so much denial.
Yeah, but maybe it's
because it even exists.
Maybe we looked at, I certainly know for me, I had no dealings with the police until I needed them, and they were, you had your doctor, if you were that way inclined, your vicar or your priest, and the local bobby, the police, they were sort of up there. It's like, so you respected them and they would be there when in your hour of need. And my gosh, what an eye-opener. It is nothing like we as general public who don't have much to do with them, nothing like you expect. Not in my experience anyway. But so my experience, they were good officers. But when you get these cohorts, they're like little nests of personality types who've been attracted by this job. And they are not only hiding in plain sight, but they're being given warrant cards and they're armed and they are literally being given a pass. So one of the things that this Garrick chap did, the first thing he did to gain the trust of these women was tell them that he was a police officer and show his warrant card and say to them, I'm a police officer, you can trust me. So the police force is being weaponized. The police force itself is being weaponized by perpetrators, and it's allowing itself to be.
Well, think about that statement you just made, and instead of it being a police officer, let's make it a teacher. I'm a teacher and I can do this. Who would be there to take care of the teacher that did this? The police and a judge. And if you can't trust them, I mean, it's like in the United States, we had a lady who had Alzheimer's. She took $13 worth of stuff from a Walmart and was walking home, and she wouldn't stop for the cop because all she wanted to do was go home. So he tackled her, broke her shoulder, held her in the office, or their holding pen, for 6 hours with no medical attention. The woman's like 75 or something, and they caught him on video, kind of scoffing at her and how they took her down and all this kind of stuff. And they got prosecuted and taken care of that way because it was all on film and it got leaked. But what was the draw for somebody to a police officer to tackle her? He could have just understood that something was amiss because she wasn't stopping. She was probably lucky if she was 90 pounds, and all she wanted to go do was go home, and him say, well, let's take you home. Where do you live? And taking her home. Instead, he's got it's just sick.
But
and
he's a strange man, and it's yes,
right.
Why would she? In that moment, and we are being given, and I honestly don't know whether to be grateful or to put my head in my hands, because as women, we are now all being sent this stuff of what to do if you are approached by a lone police officer for your own safety. How have we got to this? How have we got to the situation where 50% of the population have to be taught or given guidance and advice on how to keep safe if you're approached by a police officer? Well, for your life.
Okay, so
for your life.
So take that one type a little further. So you call, like here in the States, they have certain laws. I know about one that's people that were impersonating a man that was impersonating himself as a police officer. You can call 911 and see if there's a police officer in that area and who it is. Okay, so it is I know, right? There's a bleeper for you. So, take that person that calls 911 and says it, and then they got all their core hearts in there that aren't going to pay any attention anyway. I mean, that's why I brought up that case about that woman. They filmed it. The officers that were above them saw it. So, make all the rules you want about what we should do. We don't trust your organization anyway. So then what? And yeah, there are good ones. And I know quite a few. You know what I mean?
No, same here. But like you said, that film was leaked. And that's the same with Garrick. The only reason that these actions are taken is when it gets leaked or it gets somehow out into the public domain and they know there's going to be an outcry, then they'll take action over that one officer. But how many other times have these officers done this to other people? But also, how many times when crimes have been reported to these officers Have they dismissed those victims of other perpetrators outside of the force? You know, it's huge. It's absolutely enormous. And it needs, I mean, some people would, you know, there's some people who say defund the police. But even the ones who don't say that there's like absolute radical reform is needed. But these people can be outed. They can be outed because even when they are found out, and even when they're prosecuted, I should imagine that those officers, they will probably be reprimanded. They're quite often kept in the job. But even if they're not, they get their pensions still, even if they're imprisoned. And they're very often not sacked. They even under investigation, they are allowed to continue their jobs, which means that they've got access to all the evidence, to everything. Again, you know, what other profession does that happen in? You know, I think if you have a doctor where there's a complaint made against him that's ended up in, you know, that has some warrant, they're not allowed to carry on practicing until it's been investigated. You know, until that's over and there's a conclusion, but not with the police.
Right. And I think when you say that, I mean, you know, doctors protect each other. And you know, it just needs to be it just needs to be talked about. So it's all over in society. That's what this whole thing is about in society with domestic violence and abuse, is that it's just not talked about. And then, you know, society in itself is like, well, he didn't hit her. The door's open. She can always leave. She must like it, or he must like it, if a man's being mistreated by a woman,
or another man,
because that happens.
Or another man, which is
right.
You know.
Yeah. In the yeah, it's all over in our community, and we need to talk about it so that society can understand it, so that we can make appropriate changes that work, not just a band-aid and say, oh, well, this guy, he did that and we took him out and he's in jail, so all's good.
I think also, you know, it's not only, you know, I know for me, and I think for society as well, it's really hard. It's not just the understanding, it's the accepting. It's really difficult to accept that there are people, you know, especially when we supposedly live in civilized societies, and, you know, we have education, we have, you know, we have all of these incredible things in society around us, and to understand that domestic abuse is so prevalent and is in our world is a really hard thing to accept. I think that it's happening to us, that you just don't ever think it's going to happen to you. And that is a part of the lack of understanding, I think. So we do make excuses for it. Oh, you know, he's had a hard day at work. Oh, it's the drink, it's the drugs, it's the bad childhood, it's the stress that they're under. And we all do it. As a society, we all do it. I think because facing the reality is really hard to do. But it's almost like we need to collectively grow up a little bit and go, we have to face it now. There's too much of it. There's just so much of it. We can't ignore it any longer.
Right. And you bring up, some really great points in, like, I mean, one of my favorite points that you bring up a lot, and maybe we can expand on it a little bit, is if our child is being abused in school by another person, a neighbor, somebody that is known to us, and we call the police so that that can be managed and taken care of, charges gone, then that's what happens. But when it is our partner that is doing that abuse to us or to our child, and we go against it, then not only do we have to go against it, we have to go against the police that take it. Will they take it seriously? The judge, do they know enough information to say? Then you get the people who don't understand it, and this person, your partner, is extremely charismatic, and people are like, well, I never saw him do that. He's always been such a nice guy that, it's maddening.
It is, but the thing is, and this is what's interesting about the Andrew Tate thing, is he's actually come out and said, he's said it, he's been very, very honest about how he does it. And it's understood that the method, is it the lover boy method or something he's called it, which is his deliberate aim is to get women to be so in love with him that he can control everything that they do. And he's itemised how he does it. And it is understood and accepted that these are common tactics in human trafficking, sex trafficking, that
which falls underneath domestic violence.
But in paedophilia and all that. So it's all accepted. And it's exactly the same methodology. It's the same patterning. But when you put it in that one-on-one relationship, suddenly that it's no longer valid.
Right.
And
how come? What's the reasoning?
Well, inequality, patriarchy, two of the biggest groups, patriarchy. And that's until there is that levelling up, and maybe the stronger we all get, the harder they will push against us, but at some point something's got to give, and we need to
well, we have plenty of men who understand this because they grew up in it. We talk a lot about domestic violence here, and one of the other parts of this is growing up in it and raising kids in it. And then those kids grow up and they raise kids in it. And then it becomes a generational cycle that has continued and has continued. So yes, we can say patriarchy, right? Because that's what they wanted in order to control society. Right? And so, so pushing up against that, we have to say, this is not working.
Yeah, it's not working for anybody.
Exactly. And it's not even, it's not even working for them.
No, not really. And also the other thing is there aren't as many of them as there are of us. And this, whether that's, the groups in society who are battered and kept down by patriarchy in whatever form it takes, in various groups in society. It's I mean, that is a huge conversation to be having.
Well, it's like people, think about how, it was always the mom's fault for a while,
Mm.
the jokes,
Oh, it's always the
you
mother's
know,
fault, yeah, and it's
right? And so um I don't know, I can't think of his name. There was a Titus. What was his name? Guy. The the comedian Titus. He lived a brutal upbringing. Did a TV show about it, and people just laughed because they couldn't believe what he was talking about, and it really was what he lived, and it was so outrageous. And there's so many kids that are, you know,
But there's also an awful lot of kids, and we both, we know this, um, where they actively choose, and there are no excuses for them either, and they actively choose to rebel against the abusive parent and be the complete opposite and do everything in their power to make sure that this never ever happens to anybody else, including their own children. And I think there are more of them. But again, it's probably because we're talking about it. This is one of the benefits of the internet and the connectivity. We've got much more connectivity these days than we've ever had before. Whether it's you and me, whether it's um, uh, uh, just from information and knowledge than we've ever had in our society before. And I think that connectivity is one of the things that is one of the biggest weapons against abusers.
right. And it's the reason we talk, you know, um, it, if you talk to another survivor and you're honest and you've been a target, you know the patterns. You don't have to explain it in ways that are, it goes back to that language we always talk about. We don't have to sit there and say, oh, I think he has NPD or any of the cluster fives. Oh, he's a sociopath. We don't have to use those big words to understand what we've lived and what that looked like. And, I think just simplifying it sometimes helps to understand that what happened to us or what is happening to us is wrong and that we need to talk about it.
And also to describe when you've survived and started, you are living a life out of the other side. It's rarely completely without the abuse continuing, unless they've passed in some way. But I think it was summed up. I saw the most incredible speech by a survivor. She was a businesswoman, and she ended the speech on such a high note, saying, now I can dance in my kitchen again and I can eat fish. And it's as simple as that. And you look at her, this incredible businesswoman, articulate, beautiful, healthy, well, strong, and the joy that she put across, that she can dance in her own kitchen again and she can eat fish. And it's things that are as small and as simple as that. But we both know, I mean, that brought me to tears. It gives me goosebumps every time I think about her saying it, because that's it in a nutshell. It's down to those absolute, just those basics. And to have that removed from your life, but then to taste that joy again, that level of freedom, when that's all you're talking about doing is having a dance in your kitchen and having the choice to eat fish. It says so much, you know, and resonates enormously with anybody, like you say, who's experienced it.
I can when you were talking about that, I can remember just the sound of keys rustling at the door and knowing that it needed to be a certain way, or you know, I grew up with a family member, an extended family member, who I would be at their house playing, and at 4 o'clock we had to stop playing, put everything away, so that when he walked in the door, everything had to look perfect and be okay. And as soon as he walked in the door and saw that everything was perfect and was okay, then we could go back to playing the Monopoly game. But we couldn't leave a Monopoly game out to play with him coming home. And we know that as a society now, I hope, we know that is ridiculous. But you know that it still happens in a different degree, such as keys jiggling at the door.
It's amazing how many people, that she mentioned that in her speech as well. So again, there's the other, you know, that same sort of patterning. But yes, I mean, you know, children playing a game, and again, there is no excuse in their own home, in their own time away from school. There is no reason whatsoever why that had to change because another adult was coming into the home. There is no excuse for that. There is no honest, real reason that can be given for that other than it's about control and it's about abuse.
Well, you know, it goes back to that butcher. You know how he gets. You know, and it just it does, it needs to be talked about. It needs to be understood. But there's no reason that anybody can say that we need to excuse it anymore. We have people that are hurting, and it needs to stop. It absolutely just needs to stop. And no excuses as to why you know, even the word why, it just drives circles. So how come it hasn't stopped in, you know, yet?
Precisely.
What?
We are.
You know, it's like you said. Well, it's like you just said a few minutes ago. You've had a law since 2015. And what's the percentage about coercive control? And what's the percentage of people that have gotten charged?
I think it's 3%. And what's really interesting.
And how many have served any time?
Oh, that's. I mean, even if it gets investigated, even if they get charged, even if they get prosecuted, even if they get found guilty, they then get like really short suspended sentences. They rarely get sent to prison for it. But certainly up until recently, it just didn't happen. But what's really telling is even in this Garrick case that's just happened, the judge said it. It's been throughout the case. Coercive and controlling behaviour is such an obvious factor in what he was doing that even I think it's something like 49 charges. He's been prosecuted, 49 charges against him, which he's admitted guilty to now, with 24 rapes. So there's God knows how many charges. I've read somewhere some of them are it's like up to 80. Only three charges of coercive and controlling behaviour in all of that. Even when that's been highlighted as one of the major key factors, that he coerced these women. He controlled them. He controlled what they ate, how they slept, when they slept, if they slept. He kept them naked. He weed on them. 3 charges of coercive and controlling behaviour. So even then, they're not getting it. But yeah, I mean, there's just work to be done. There's still work to be done. But sometimes I think it gets overcomplicated, and it's really, really simple. We are supposed to be civilized. We can send things to Mars and to the moon, and we can create incredible... We can create robotic humans, holograms, stuff that, 20 years ago were stuff of feature films, just of the movies. And yet we cannot stop mainly women and children being tortured and terrorised by the person that is supposed to want to protect them the most because they love them. That's their parent and their partner. And I'm really struggling now to not come to the conclusion that this is deliberate by the powers that be, and you get all like, you just can't. It's just like I can't think of an excuse big enough at the moment. That's the frame of mind that I'm in.
Well, I believe that men are involved in, and boys are involved in being abused as well. At the same time, you have a society that is overwhelming of women speaking out against it. So obviously, for women to be outraged and speaking against it, when our society tells us as women, along with our physiology, that we need to protect our kids, the kids that we bear and give birth to, and we're still not of value to make that kind of decision. Are you following me?
Totally
as far
you.
as
I'm totally following
right
you.
And we should. They should be looking at us and saying, where's the care for us as a society as to what's happening? Where's the care for our children? There's no excuse for not caring or having compassion for somebody that's being hurt.
But when you look at the institutions that run our societies, that's the politicians, that's the government bodies, the government offices, of which the criminal justice system, including the police, our schools, all of those, they are all a part of that. That's why I say it has to come from leadership. It has to come from the top. And it
also has to come from corporations.
Corporations, yeah. Corporations,
educational.
Corporations over here are really, really... Oh, dear, sorry, I've got a wobble on. What? What's happening there? God. Suddenly all gone a little bit... Oh, it's gone a bit Pete Tong. Hang on, everything's slipping and sliding. There we go. Right. I think it was like my computer was on an ice rink or something then. Sorry about that.
Oh my God. That was hilarious. You're like, oh. Ooh.
Oh dear.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Now,
I have so missed you.
and I have missed you too, my darling.
Okay,
And what
so
I would
where
love
were we?
to do, what I would love to do at some point, which we must talk about, having just brought that up, is how corporations are really, really stepping into the breach. Some companies, and it's a really fascinating new movement that's happening, and I would love to discuss that on another session.
Well, I would agree. I mean, I think if we're going to make dents anywhere, it's going to be in society.
Yeah.
Since society has to push up and say, enough. We have people that are hurting.
Yeah.
We have, we have to, step up and say this is not acceptable. And it
just keep pushing, keep pushing. And at some point, it will cave. But the interesting thing about corporations is, certainly for high level leadership in institutions, money is money. Money is where the money is. That's what hurts them. So, but to have businesses and employers really starting to get it, it's a very, very exciting
well, and I think, also too, I think corporations are understanding some of the risks and some of the gains, of having good employees, and they're more productive if they're being cared for.
Absolutely. Yeah, the cost to so the cost is in billion. I actually saw how many trillion. Oh darn it, I meant to write it down.
That's all right. We're going to do another show on the corporations.
It is on the in the US. It's like 74 billion or whatever here. But having a safe, secure, productive workforce benefits everybody, but particularly the corporations. So, and that's just without the humanistic, basic kind. That's if you wanted to be really sort of brutally brutal about it in terms of cost effectiveness and firm security and things like that, then it's a no-brainer. But they are really starting to get it. I've got meetings next week, so it'd be really good to it'd be really, really nice to have a conversation around that, because I do think it's a very exciting relatively new, really new actually aspect of this fight that is really gaining momentum and really actually having some impact as well. So,
well, I think that's, where we need to go.
It's nice to have something positive.
Correct. The support, and just make this world a better place.
Absolutely.
So that we can all thrive. Yep. So we can all thrive, not just one person, one sector of our society surviving. And actually, they're thriving instead. It's the other part of the society that is just surviving. So, but we'll be talking about corporations another day.
Yeah.
So,
we will.
We're going to tie this one up for today, and it was a joy seeing you. I will see you on the other side. Bye, love.
Bye-bye, darling.
Hello. Thank you for watching our channel today. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell for any new content, and find us on Patreon and your favorite podcasts. We hope we're one of them. Bye-bye.